Have you ever been absolutely sure Santa Claus was real just because there were presents under the tree every Christmas? What about when you're convinced your favorite celebrity is the nicest person alive, ignoring every bad headline about them? Yep, we've all been there. These aren't just random beliefs. They're shaped by something sneaky going on in our minds called confirmation bias, a mental filter that makes us look for information that agrees with what we already believe and ignore the rest. In today's video, we're going to break down what confirmation bias really is. A truth that most of us believe eating late at night makes us gain weight. One day, we see an article saying late night eating linked to obesity. So we feel validated by our thought. But then we scroll past another article that says total calories matter more than when we eat. But it doesn't matter. We ignore that idea because we choose to believe that eating late makes us fatter. Another famous example of this comes from a classic study by psychologist Peter Wason in 1960. He gave people a simple task: figure out the rule behind a sequence of numbers 2, 4, 6. Most people guessed, oh, the rule must be even numbers increasing by 2. Then they tested their theory by saying 8, 10, 12. And the researcher would say, yes, that fits. So they thought they nailed it. But here's the twist. The real rule was just any increasing numbers. They didn't test other possibilities because their brains weren't trying to disprove their theory. They were only looking for evidence that supported it. That's confirmation bias in action. We don't seek the truth, we seek to be right. So confirmation bias is the tendency to seek information that confirms your thoughts and beliefs. This happens when you focus on supporting your beliefs and ignore other information that contradicts them. So why does our brain even do this? Well, from a neuroscience point of view, the brain loves efficiency. Constantly challenging your own beliefs takes energy. The prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for critical thinking and self-control, has to work harder when we're faced with information that doesn't match our existing beliefs. Meanwhile, when we do find information that confirms what we already believe, our brain gives us a little hit of dopamine, the same reward chemical that lights up when we eat chocolate or get likes on social media. So, essentially, confirmation bias feels good, and our brain is wired to chase that feeling. Alright, so how do we actually know when confirmation bias is happening? Obviously, it shows up in little habits, in how we speak, what we choose to pay attention to, and even in what we remember. You only search for info that supports your beliefs. Say you believe that drinking coffee is bad for your health. What do you Google? Probably something like why coffee is harmful, not is coffee actually good or bad. This is one of the biggest red flags. You're not exploring both sides. You're just reinforcing what you already think. You dismiss or downplay anything that disagrees with you. When you do see something that challenges your belief, you might roll your eyes, question the source, or just ignore it altogether. You rely on stereotypes or personal biases when judging information. Let's say you hear a news story and your reaction depends on who it's about. If it's someone from a group you already don't trust, you're more likely to believe the worst. If it's someone you like, you might give them the benefit of the doubt no matter what the facts say. That's confirmation bias working hand in hand with personal prejudice. Or how you always remember the times your gut feeling was right, and forget the times it totally missed the mark. Yeah, our memory can be super biased, especially when it helps confirm the story we want to believe. You get emotionally triggered when your belief is confirmed, but barely react when it's not. Let's say someone says something that backs up your opinion. Suddenly, you feel pumped, validated, maybe even a little smug. But when you hear something that doesn't match your belief, you brush it off. That uneven reaction is a strong clue that confirmation bias is at play. 3 types of confirmation bias. Throughout years of research, psychologists have identified 3 common types of confirmation bias. 1. Information search bias. This happens when we actively look for information that supports what we already believe and ignore anything that might challenge it. Sometimes it even shows up in the way we frame our questions. Let's say you believe that left-handed people are smarter. Instead of searching for something neutral, like are there any cognitive differences between left and right-handed people, you type into Google, why are left-handed people more intelligent? See the difference? the question itself is already leading toward a certain answer. 2. Interpretation bias. This occurs when we analyze information in a way that strengthens our current beliefs, even if the data could be interpreted differently. We tend to value confirming evidence more than anything that questions our perspective. For example, if you're convinced a specific diet works, you'll focus on the success stories and ignore studies or data that say otherwise. 3. Memory bias. Our brains don't just store facts, they store stories that fit what we already believe. We tend to selectively remember things that support our views, while downplaying or forgetting what doesn't. For instance, if you grew up believing Santa Claus was real, you might clearly remember the Christmas mornings when presents magically appeared, while totally forgetting the years your parents hinted otherwise. Confirmation bias is significant because it can lead people to strongly believe in false ideas or give more weight to information that supports their existing beliefs rather than information backed by solid evidence. People may become overly confident in their own beliefs, even when, in reality, they may be ignoring or overlooking a lot of evidence that contradicts those beliefs. These opposing pieces of evidence could actually challenge or disprove their assumptions, but confirmation bias keeps them from fully considering that possibility. As a result, confirmation bias can lead to risky decision-making, causing people to miss warning signs or ignore critical information that doesn't fit with what they want to believe. Research has shown that even medical doctors are just as vulnerable to confirmation bias as anyone else. For instance, a doctor may develop an early gut feeling about a psychological diagnosis while treating a patient. That initial impression can interfere with their ability to objectively assess new information, even when that information might point to a more likely or accurate diagnosis. That's why, in the field of medicine, it's essential to combine initial impressions with differential diagnoses and clinical test results in order to reach the most accurate conclusion. Another example can be seen in the legal system. Judges or jury members may form an opinion about a defendant's guilt or innocence before all the evidence is presented. Once that opinion is formed, confirmation bias can get in the way of fairly processing new information during the trial, which can lead to unjust outcomes. The truth is, all of us have confirmation bias, and some of these biases can shape how we see the world. Even if we believe we're totally open-minded and always base our conclusions on facts. However, this bias can be reduced by considering the consequences of our beliefs and exploring alternative explanations. When we open ourselves to the idea that there might be other valid hypotheses beyond the one we personally hold, we begin to gather information in a more active, open-minded way, rather than just filtering it through a one-sided lens. Once we understand what confirmation bias is and accept that it exists, we can start training ourselves to be more curious about opposing viewpoints and to genuinely listen to what others have to say. This shift in mindset helps us see different angles of an issue and understand beliefs from perspectives we might not have considered before. Of course, overcoming confirmation bias takes conscious effort, but awareness is the first step.